Well, last week in chapter 37, the focus of the book of Genesis turned to Joseph. And the remaining chapters of the book of Genesis focus on Joseph, except for chapter 38. In chapter 38, we follow the story of one of Joseph's brothers named Judah. And just as a reminder from last week, it was Judah who had the idea of selling Joseph into slavery to the Ishmaelite traders. And so it's really, Judah is the reason that Joseph is now a slave in Egypt. And I think one reason that God shifts from Joseph to Judah is to contrast the two men. As we'll see in the remaining chapters of the book of Genesis, Joseph is a man of integrity. He's a man of character. He's a man of moral purity. He remains faithful to God, while Judah possesses none of those qualities. Judah could not be more opposite to Joseph. For example, Joseph, as we'll see later in Genesis, Joseph flees from sexual temptation because he doesn't want to sin against God. In contrast, Judah visits a prostitute. Joseph saves his entire family from certain death. Judah abandons his responsibility to his family. So again, these two men could not be more different from each other. And the difference between Joseph and Judah illustrates the difference between a person who is governed by the Spirit of God and a person who is governed by their flesh. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 8, it says, "For he who sows to his flesh will of the flesh reap corruption, but he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life." Judah is a man who sows to the flesh, and he reaps corruption. He reaps corruption in his own life personally. He reaps corruption in his family, with his children, with his sons. Verse 1 tells us again, "It came to pass at that time that Judah departed from his brothers and visited a certain Adullamite whose name was Hirah." It came to pass at that time, meaning at the time that Joseph was sold by his brothers to the Ishmaelite traders and was sold into slavery and taken down to Egypt. It's at that time that Judah, we're told, departed from his brothers and went to live in a place called Adullam. Adullam may sound familiar if you're a student of the Old Testament. Remember, David fled to the cave in Adullam, and that's where the mighty men of David gathered to David at the cave of Adullam. Same place, same area. And literally it says Judah went down from his brethren. And the reason it says he went down is because Judah's brethren were living in Hebron in the Judean mountains, and Judah went down from the Judean mountains to Adullam. Adullam was in the lowlands, or the foothills, what is called the Shephelah. And I think that this is, the geography here plays a part in understanding the story. While Judah was living in the Judean mountains, Judah was living there with his family, his brothers, his father, his sisters. And while he was living in the mountains of Judea, the mountains provided a level of isolation and a level of insulation from the Canaanites. But Judah chose to leave his family and leave the security and the safety of the Judean mountains to relocate down in the lowlands, where he would be around pagan Canaanites all the time. And I think that this move tells us a lot about Judah and where his heart is. Judah's not seeking first the kingdom of God. He's not making God a priority. He's not making personal holiness a priority in his life. He's not walking circumspectly, as we're told to do in Ephesians 5. He's choosing to go live among the Canaanites. He's choosing to leave the fellowship with his family and the safety and security and the protection of the Judean mountains to go live with the pagans. As he's living there in verse 2, Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shuah. Again, that's the father's name. It's not the daughter's name. And he married her, and he went into her. So Judah married a Canaanite girl. He married a non-believer. In the book of Genesis, we have seen the emphasis on the patriarchs marrying well, marrying the right kind of girl and not marrying the wrong kind of girl, haven't we? We've seen that come up several times with the patriarchs. Remember, Abraham sent his servant back to Ur to find a bride for his son Isaac, and Abraham made his servant swear that he would not allow his son to marry a Canaanite girl. Whatever you do, don't let my son marry a Canaanite. We also saw the same emphasis with Jacob and Esau, and who they married. Jacob also went to Ur to find a bride. Esau, we're told, did marry Canaanite girls, and we're told that it grieved his parents' hearts. His parents were heartbroken that he would marry Canaanites. And here we see with Judah that Judah has no regard for those things, no concern. He marries a Canaanite girl. You know, in the New Testament, believers in Jesus Christ are commanded to not be yoked together with unbelievers, and that's especially true in marriage. You know, you think about a yoke and two animals that are yoked together. If you're yoked together with an unbeliever, especially in particular in marriage, you're pulling two different directions. And there's going to be this friction and this discomfort that is always present there in that marriage. But again, Judah he's ruled by his flesh, not the Spirit of God. He saw a girl and married her. It didn't matter to him that she was a Canaanite. He didn't care what God thought about this girl or what his parents thought about him marrying this girl. He just saw her, married her. And Judah's decision regarding a spouse sounds like that of Samson, doesn't it? The book of Judges chapter 14, we're told of Samson that one day he was in Timnah, and it says, one of the Philistine women caught his eye. And when he returned home, he told his father and mother, a young Philistine woman in Timnah caught my eye, and I want to marry her. Get her for me. And his father and mother objected. They were godly people. And they said to their son, isn't there even one woman in our tribe or among all the Israelites you could marry? Couldn't you marry a godly girl? You have to marry this Philistine girl? Why must you go to the pagan Philistines to find a wife? But Samson told his father, get her for me. She looks good to me. That's kind of Judah here.